Hello everybody, it is Stu and welcome back to my channel. Check out my clients before. She is super blonde. In today's video, we are focusing on adding depth and dimension into a blonde. So I'm going to show you my favorite techniques. Starting off with mixing, I'm going to be mixing up some Blonde Me, my go-to lightener, and I'm going to be making 13 volume by mixing their 7 volume developer with their 20 volume developer equal parts. I always mix this 1 to 2 because that is the consistency that I like. Sometimes I will make it a little bit runnier, but whenever I'm just popping in a few foils, 1 to 2 is my go-to. As far as my low light goes, I'm going to be mixing up Bricklay Shades EQ 6N, 7NB, and 7GB. I'm going to be putting the measurements here so you guys can see exactly how much, and I'm only adding a dash of 6N just to add a little bit of depth where it doesn't go too dark, because we know the blondes are super porous, and something to give it a little bit more longevity is I'm mixing it with 10 volume developer instead of the Shades EQ processing solution. I'm gonna start off right here on her hairline on a slight diagonal, just because honestly it works the best with the head shape. And you see I'm carving off those little baby hairs and getting those out of the way just by brushing them down towards her face. This is gonna ensure that those tiny little fragile hairs stays nice and safe and they don't get over processed. And it's gonna be leaving a little bit of dimension, so whenever she does pull her hair up, those things that we've weaved out and those hairs that we have brushed out are gonna go back up. Like let's say she's putting her hair in a ponytail, her hair is going up and she is going to have a nice gradient blend of the dropout from the weave and those baby hairs that we carved off on top of this medium stitch highlight. Now I'm not going in and doing baby lights, but I'm still doing see-through sections with more of a textured weave. A lot of people call this a chunky highlight, a textured highlight, whatever you want to call it. I'd call them ribbon highlights because it's just a term that I came up with, honestly. And highlighting like this, you're going to be getting ribbons of the highlights that we're adding in, but also keeping ribbons of her regrowth and dimension within the hair. I honestly love this stitch pattern because I'm going to be getting maximum lift because I still have see-through sections, as you can see. And something that I do want to make super clear is that I'm just adding pops of brightness towards her part line and around her face, so she still has brightness around, almost just like a little sun-kissed effect. I'm going to be turning my brush sideways and running it down each individual weave just to help break open the hair and make sure that everything is going to be fully saturated, because every hair that we are weaving out has an intention of being lighter. Every hair's got a purpose and we don't want any hair to get left behind. So I'm going to be making sure everything's fully saturated, folding in these foils and continuing the same process on the other side of our hairline, and then we're going to go straight into the money piece. So as you can see, we have carved off a little bit of a bang box. This is where we're going to be focusing on that money piece, that pop piece that she's going to see off of our part. As we're going through and foiling, I'm going to be doing those same steps of combing out those baby hairs, still weaving directly off of the hairline so it's not too harsh. And I'm going to be going through and popping in these foils closer. And as I reach the top of that box, off of our hairline, more into the interior of her hair, I'm going to be spacing those foils out a little bit more. This is going to ensure that she has a nice pop of brightness off of her hairline, and then as it's transitioning into the interior of her hair, it's going to start blending a lot more with the broken up pieces and dimension that we're going to be adding in. So I'm going to be continuing that same foil placement. As I'm continuing it and you guys are watching it, there's some key steps in doing a bang box to ensure that it looks perfect. Step number 1 is going to make sure that your bang box is even on both sides of her part. This client luckily parts down the middle, so I just go down the middle and I make sure to the right and to the left side what I'm carving off is going to be the exact same size. This is going to ensure that her money piece isn't brighter on one side and not as bright on the other, and help keep everything even and consistent with our foil work. Step number 2 is to ensure the health of the client's hair. Whenever you're doing these front pieces, these are the most fragile pieces, as we all know, is because they get the most heat whenever clients are styling their hair. It's what the clients touch the most throughout the day. This is where people put their hair up in a ponytail and it's pulling on these little tiny fragile baby guys. The hairline is always going to be the most fragile, so we're going to be ensuring the health of these guys by going in with a lower volume developer. I am popping in these foils first because it's going to take longer to process this with a low volume developer than for her lowlights to process. For her lowlights, we only have to let that sit for 20 to 25 minutes. These guys can process nice and slow with that lower strength developer. Blonde Me also has a bond builder inside of it, so it's going to be really safe for the hair. And we're also ensuring the integrity of this client's hair by not overlapping the previously lightened ends. So as far as the back goes, we are working on a Bricklay pattern. You can see my assistant Sarah here tackling it, and we are going to be pulling through some of these low lights, and most of them are going to be shadow lights. I actually have a shadow light video if you guys want to check it out. I think it's about 2 videos back, and it's a really good example of like what shadow lights do all on their own. But what we're going to be doing is using that low light formula to go through and add in a lot of depth through the interior of her hair. The way that I like to think about it, and I say this all the time, is that if someone was wanting to add in a little bit of depth, go more blonde, just like break it up a little bit, the key is to pulling through low lights through the interior of her hair. So basically from like the back of the ear to the back of the ear, and then the top will highlight a little bit. The reason that I think that this is key is because whenever you think about it, if you're out laying on a beach, you're getting a little suntan, the sun is naturally going to be lightening up on your hairline, up underneath your hair, like on that halo sectioning, just giving it a little sun kiss. It's not really going to be touching the interior of the hair, so it's going to just be brightness all on the outside. The inside is going to keep that natural color and that dimension. And jumping back to me in the front, I'm going to be continuing that same low light technique on the interior of her hair. From right off those highlights until I get to where her head kind of curves, I'm going to be adding in those full low lights, still weaving the same. You can see here me adding those in. But while you guys are watching this, I kind of wanted to break down our formula. So if you remember our formula, it is 7GB, 7NB, and 6N. 7GB is a golden beige, and that's honestly the most important tone in this formula. The reason being is because the undertone is orange yellow. So in order to take this client darker, I can't just throw on a level 7 or throw on a level 6 onto her. I'm gonna need to fill her hair, and you know, all filling is adding back in those undertones that have been lifted out. The way that I like to think about it is if I put lightener onto a level like 7's hair and I'm trying to get it to level 9, what are those tones that are gonna show up? You're gonna see a little bit of orange, you're gonna see some yellow until it gets to that pale yellow state. So basically I'm reversing this and putting those tones that I would see lifted out, put back into the hair in order to fill it. Filling's just like a fancy way, I guess you can say, of adding in back those undertones, but that's the way that I think about it. The undertones for a level 7, especially with the Shades EQ line, is going to be orange and yellow, and mixed together that makes gold. So by adding in the 7GB, which is a golden beige, we are filling the hair. So if we forgot this step or didn't add it back into the hair, it would look muddy. Sometimes it can even look a little green and the color wouldn't stick or hold. So 7GB is our filler tone. We did 7NB, which is a neutral brown blonde, and that's just to neutral out everything. And I only did 5 grams of the 6N because that's considered in Shades EQ a dark blonde, but I think it's more of like a super light brown in my head, but it's considered a dark blonde, and that's just slightly adding the smallest amount of depth into the hair. And if I'm being honest, I kind of popped off and kept talking about that formula, but I hope you guys got a good visual and can understand what I mean by filling the hair. If you want a complete video on that, I can totally do it. I actually have one coming, just kidding, stay tuned. But what I've done here on the crown is I went off her apart on slight diagonals on both sides, alternating those shadow lights, low lights, and highlights, as you can see. And we're going to be letting her process for at least 25 minutes to let that low light formula completely soak in, and then we can get into toning. So now we can mix up for our root and our toner. For our root, what I've got going on is 6N, 7NB, 6NA, and 7NA, and with the gel processing solution by Shades EQ. And our global toner is going to be 9NW, 9P, and 9M. And honestly, a little trick that you just saw me do is putting in my processing solution before I add in my tones, because I am the king of overmixing, and I feel like it just helps me not overmix. So we've got our client all washed. We just washed her with 7 seconds by Unite Twice to make sure that everything is going to be nice and clean, so we have a nice blank canvas to tone on. Getting into our root formula, the reason I did 6N and 7NB is because that matches the tones that we added in the highlight, and I feel like it kind of brings everything together. The reason that we added in 6 and 8 and 7 and 8 is because those are both natural levels with ash. They have blue and violet undertones, so it's going to be counteracting any orange or any yellow or fighting off any warmth that she might have at her root. As far as my root application goes, I've got her hairline sectioned off, and I'm going to be going on a slight diagonal and not bringing it as far down in the front as I am the back. You saw how far I mapped it out for Megan in the back. We're doing about an inch, maybe a little over an inch in the back, and then a little bit of an inch in the interior. And then we're just going through and we're going to be tapping it where we did all that highlighting and hairline detail work at her money piece and across her entire hairline to keep it super nice and bright. I'm going to be leaving this formula on for the full 15 minutes. I'm just going to be tapping out her hairline, and then we can go ahead and apply her all over toner. As you can see right here, I'm starting the process of tapping out her hairline. So the root toner everywhere has sat for the full 15 minutes that I wanted it to, and now I'm just going through and barely tapping this guy out just to blur any harsh lines. This way it's going to stay brighter around her face, but also it's going to help blend in everything and kind of soften it at the root so everything grows out really nice and evenly, and it looks soft and blended everywhere. What I've done now is I've taken her back to the bowl. We've wet her ends just so this Shades EQ all over global toner takes, and you can like honestly saturate it and rub it in a little bit better. My toner again is 9NW, which is a natural warm tone, 9P, which is blue and violet base, so it's counteracting any orange or yellow tones, and it's fighting off any warmth at all that may be left over in her hair, and 9M, which is matte. And the best way that I can describe 9M, you guys, is just that it is a nice, beautiful, like sandy tone. A mix between the sandy tone of the 9M and the 9NW warm tones. I feel like this is going to come all together and kind of neutral out everything where she has a nice bright blonde. Anytime you're mixing any ash tones and warm tones, you get a really nice neutral tone. So what I've got going on is the NW being my warm tone, the P which is going to be my ash tone, and then the 9M helping neutralize everything, so it just ends up being a nice, super beautiful bright blonde. And yes, we did our 1 minute rule whenever it came to the all over toner. I left it on until it looked scary, left it on a minute longer, and then we rinsed it, we shampooed her and conditioned her, and now all we have to do is style this client. This is going to be wrapping up the video today, and I hope you guys enjoy the after. I'm excited to style it and let you guys see. If you've learned something in this video, honestly, that is all I hope. You take away something. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this video. Comment down with any video ideas, any questions about this process that you have. Let me know any questions at all. You guys, I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video, and I'll be back next Wednesday with another color tutorial. Alright, you ready?
Yes. Hold on. Oh my gosh.
It's not too crazy. It's
No,
more like
this is
right here, and it
like-
gets like darker in the
This
back.
is exactly what I wanted, but better. I didn't know I wanted this till you did it. Wow.
I really
love
like
it.
And it's still like a little brighter. And you still feel blonde. It's not like you're
Yes.
crazy. See, you did
Crazy.
it?
Oh my gosh. I love it. Wait, this is the real tester. Let's see.
Oh yeah, let's stand next to that color.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I love it.
I feel like you look tanner too. Do you?